one of the ideas that's promoted by GADOLatry, meaning the Gadol says something and we uncritically accept what the Gadol says, one of these ideas is completely false. There's many ideas that's promoted by Gedolim which actually contradict the Torah, right? And here we see what's so pernicious about GADOLatry. In the case of Reform Judaism, we understand the rabbi is being honest. He says, I don't like this mitzvah. I want to eat lobster. I want to eat shrimp. So a person can now exercise his critical judgment and understand, oh, really lobster and shrimp are forbidden to eat. But he's saying he's against it. So I happen to like the Torah, and I know I don't want to eat lobster and shrimp. But GADOLatry is pernicious because the rabbi who's promoting anti-Torah behavior pretends like he's actually a spokesperson for God. He's a Gadol, and he has das Torah. Das Torah means knowledge of the Torah. You don't have knowledge of the Torah, right? Even though the pasuk says, Torah sivalanu Moshe, morasha kehilat Yaakov. The Torah is the inheritance of all of Israel. Every Jew must study. Every Jew must understand. Every Jew must perform the mitzvot. But GADOLatry says no, that there's the Gadol, and the Gadol has a special Das Elyon. That, of course, is from Bilam, right? Das Torah. So I want to bring to your attention one of the false gods promoted by GADOLatry, one of the false ideas, and it is as follows. Yes, it's true. There are boys serving in the army and they're doing their job. But us, by being in the kollel and studying Torah all day, we are doing our job to protect the Jewish people, which is to say that because we're studying Torah and we're in Oilat Mima, we are actually in a partnership with the boys who are actually physically fighting. So we have this partnership where they go to the front lines, and we're not on the front lines, but we're helping those who are in the front lines. I want to examine, is this correct? Is it correct to say that because there's a group of people studying Torah and they refuse to perform the mitzvah, milchemet mitzvah, but put that on the side, meaning we're not looking, and we've already demonstrated in the previous classes how milchemet Talmud Torah does not exclude you from the performance of the mitzvah, right? But put that on the side. This idea that when we have doilim, or the Talmidim, or the Talmidei Chachamim studying Torah, that it protects Am Yisrael, is that a correct ideology? Is that a correct notion? Now, as a general matter, of course it's correct that when the Jewish people perform the mitzvot, and one of the most prominent mitzvot is Talmud Torah, but Talmud Torah keneged kulam, that of course we believe and we know when the Torah says that im bechukotai telechu ve'et mitzvotai tishmeru va'asitem otam, that there's going to be certain berachot in the world, right? So we accept that, of course, sachar va'onesh. We would never reject the idea that performance of the mitzvot, which includes Talmud Torah, would inure to the benefit of all Am Yisrael. But that's a very simplistic approach. It's almost, I would say, the people who promote this ideology are almost infantile. Not just because it's an infantile attitude towards life, towards society, because it shows a tremendous ignorance of Judaism, of the Torah. Because we see in the Torah that there were generations, like the generation of David HaMelech, where they used to be tzaddikim, where they used to follow the Torah, and yet many people died in battle, and there was a lot of losses in the battle. Eventually David HaMelech succeeded. But it wasn't just a simple thing of, we're studying Torah, and therefore everything is going to be okay. That notion is a false notion. On the other hand, in the days of Ahav, who was the Rasha, Merusha, and Chelek L'Ramabah, and yet the Gemara describes how he would defeat the enemy, and they won a lot of wars. And the Gemara describes and compares Ahav, who won many wars, even though he was a Rasha, and compared it to the days of David HaMelech, who unfortunately was many losses in the battlefield, even though he was a Sadiq. And they say that the factor in this case, in this particular comparison, is that in the days of Ahav, there was ahdut, there was unity among the people. There was a sense of camaraderie and common mission. In the case of David HaMelech, apparently there was less camaraderie and less common mission. There was a lot of dissension because you remember David HaMelech came after Shaul, and many of the Shevatim did not fully accept David HaMelech. So here's just one example of, even though they were studying Torah in the days of David HaMelech, to just say, oh, that by itself, that's our contribution, it's nonsensical. That's just incorrect, right? I want to bring one more example. And this really is, it's just irrefutable. I mean, I'm going to bring you an example now, and you're going to see how, again, GADOLatry leads to false gods and to false notions. And they reduce people's minds to infantile minds, where everything is becomes very silly and, almost like kindergarten, like, oh, we're studying Torah and God is protecting us and you're going to the army and yes, you're dying in the battlefield, but we're dying in the tent of Torah. So it becomes very infantile and immature. It's not a serious way to approach life. It's not a serious way to speak and communicate with people. To tell a person whose family member, child, died in war, to tell him, hey, he died in the war, really, I'm being reserved in the way I'm speaking. Infantile. Let's just use that word and not some other word. But I want to show how this idea is not just infantile, but it's actually incorrect. In the days of the Bar Kokhba revolution, it was the greatest Tanaim. Right? And before the Bar Kokhba revolution, when the Romans destroyed the Bet HaMikdash, it was the greatest Tanaim. Right? There were tremendous Talmid. I mean, the greatest generation of Chachamim ever, I would say. The generation of Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Gamliel de Havne, Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanuz, Rabbi Yoshua ben Hananya, in the days of the Bar Kokhba revolution, Rabbi Eliezer HaModai, in addition to those other Chachamim, of course. So, would anyone say that they didn't study Torah in those days? Right. So, with all due respect to Ponevezh Yeshiva, they're not greater than the yeshiva in Yavne, right? It would be Elazar ben Azariah, right? A little, right? Was the Rosh Yeshiva after Rabban Gamliel or with Rabban Gamliel, and Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, right? So let's just say that they're equal. How about we leave it at that? And yet, the wars with the Romans, with the Chachamim really studying Torah. I'm not talking about what they have today in Ponevezh, where people can't say Kriyat Shema. They cannot fulfill their own obligation for Kriyat Shema because they don't know how to read the Pesukim. And if you don't know how to read the Pesukim, technically you didn't fulfill Kriyat Shema Kehilchata. I'm not talking about those people who study Torah, who really can't study Torah because they don't have the linguistic skills to pronounce the words. But fair enough. I'm talking about the real Tanaim, the authors of the Mishnayot, right? The transmitters of the Torah Shebe'al Peh, Chelek Mishalshelet HaKabbalah. They were studying Torah. And look what happened. The Romans completely massacred Shalom Nida, what happened in the days of the Bet HaMikdash Hashanim, when they destroyed the Bet HaMikdash. But then in the days of the Bar Kokhba revolution, I mean, they literally massacred everyone. It was horrible. I believe that something like 90% of the Jews in Judea were massacred by the Romans, including these people who study Torah. So this idea that studying Torah protects the Jewish people, well, yes, in the sense that when the Jewish people do mitzvot, and we go in the Bechukotai Telechu, yes, Hashem will bring beracha upon us, studying Torah, but doing other mitzvot as well. But this focus specifically on Talmud Torah, that it somehow will magically ensure the victory of Israel over its enemies, or somehow will help the soldiers, that's just incorrect. That's just false. Now the problem with GADOLatry is we suspend our judgment. The Gadol said, "Oh, so we're studying Torah." You see how dangerous GADOLatry is? Because what I just said wasn't such a great insight. Like, what a hidush! Wow, how did I know that the Bar Kokhba revolution was Rabbi Akiva and other rabbi? It's really not such a profound point I'm making, but we're so imprisoned by the notion of the Gadol and the Gdolim, and everybody says so, and the chief rabbi of Israel says so, and everybody understands, of course, studying Torah protects us, that we don't think critically. Now what happens? October 7th. So, Ponovich was, I believe, open on October 5th and 6th and 4th, and these other yeshivot were open during those times. So, we see also in our days that this notion is completely false. It's incorrect to say that at such a simplistic level. So what is the answer? The answer is, meaning, what would protect Am Yisrael? First of all, God protects Am Yisrael, of course. But God is looking at the nation of Israel, and He judges the nation of Israel in accordance with the behavior of the nation, in accordance with how is the nation acting, right? At the societal level, how are people acting with each other? Is there honesty? Is there integrity? Is there ethical behavior, right? Of course, mitzvah ben adam lamakom, shemirat Shabbat, other things, right? So, again, reducing it just to we're studying Torah is incorrect. We've seen this over and over again in history, in the Torah itself, in the Gemara itself. We understand that this is an incorrect notion. And if Am Yisrael is suffering, and we are suffering, then we have to ask ourselves, and now that we understand that the GADOLatry is just a false god, so now we have to ask ourselves, what are we doing wrong? Can we make teshuvah? Maybe we need to make political teshuvah, not just individual teshuvah. Maybe as a nation, our systems are not working, right? These are all important questions. But because of GADOLatry, our minds are always thinking, Torah, does it really protect us? It protects us, so we kind of stop thinking, right? So we need to be mature. We need to grow up. We need to stop thinking like children and accepting the pronouncements of rabbis who are, not all rabbis, but some of them, misrepresenting the Torah.